Kevin Stefanski has just received the worst NFL coaching grade by the committee. Guys, this one is hella funny.
Kevin Stefanski's grade from his final year in Cleveland has raised eyebrows. He received a C-, the lowest grade of any head coach in the league.
The Atlanta Falcons thought they were making a power move. They thought they were stealing one of the most coveted coaching minds on the entire market. They thought Kevin Stefanski, two-time AP Coach of the Year, was the missing piece that was finally going to unlock all that offensive firepower sitting in the ATL. They thought they were winning the offseason. They were wrong, dead wrong, because the receipts just dropped. The NFLPA report cards leaked, and what's inside is absolutely devastating for the Falcons organization, for Kevin Stefanski personally, and for every single person in that front office who looked at the Browns' 8-26 record over the last 2 seasons and still thought, yeah, this is our guy.
It states Kevin Stefanski earned NFL worst coach grade on NFLPA report cards. Now, from my understanding, these report cards has not been made public to the public, but certain reporters from Atlanta leaked this information out to different media outlets, letting the world know that Kevin Stefanski did receive the worst grade out of any NFL head coach when it comes to this annual report card. It goes on to say,
the NFLPA report cards are not some media narrative. They're not clickbait. They're not hot takes from fans with Twitter accounts and too much free time. These are player surveys completed by the actual human beings who lace up their cleats every Sunday, who run the routes, who take the hits, who live inside these organizations 365 days a year. These are the men who know. When they speak, you better listen. And what did they say about Kevin Stefanski? C-. That's it. C-, the absolute lowest grade given to any head coach in the entire National Football League this season. Lower than coaches whose teams were a complete dumpster fire. Lower than coaches who got shown the door mid-season. Lower than coaches presiding over franchises that have been irrelevant for years. Think about what that means for a second. The NFL is a 32-team league. 32 head coaches, and the players, not the media, not the fans, the players decided that Kevin Stefanski was the single worst of all of them. Dead last, rock bottom. That is not a coincidence. That is not bad luck. That is a verdict.
This wasn't the fans. This wasn't anything. The people in the building, this is how they felt about the Cleveland Browns. You want to go with it? All right, let's walk through it. So
now here's where it gets even wilder. You want to talk about context? Let's talk about context, because across the league this past season, there were coaches who got fired before the year even finished. In-season firings, mid-campaign dismissals, the kind of thing that only happens when an organization looks at what's in front of them and says, we literally cannot wait any longer. Those coaches, the ones who couldn't even survive a full season, graded out above Kevin Stefanski. Let that sink in for a second. The Titans fired their head coach in the middle of the season. The Giants didn't just fire Brian Daboll mid-season, they did it while leaks were coming out left and right about how dysfunctional everything was behind the scenes. And yet, when the players handed out their grades, Kevin Stefanski was still the worst of the worst. He finished below coaches who were literally escorted out of their buildings before the playoffs even started. What's the excuse now? Seriously, what is it?
Quote, we understand the NFL Players Association posted its team report cards on its players-only website today. The union cherry picks which topics and responses to include and exclude. Players have no role in drafting the report card's commentary.
Meanwhile, look at who's sitting at the top of that list. Sean McVay, Dan Quinn, who got an A+, the highest rated coach in the entire league, Mike McDaniel, Andy Reid, Ben Johnson. These are names that win. These are names that players go to bat for. These are the coaches that their rosters genuinely respect. Dan Quinn, let's pause on that name for a moment. He got an A+, and here's the part that should make every Falcons fan feel slightly sick to their stomach. Dan Quinn was the Falcons' former coach at one point in this conversation. He went somewhere else, rebuilt himself, and his players just called him the best coach in the league. Atlanta had that energy. Atlanta let that culture walk. And then they replaced it, eventually, after a Raheem Morris detour, with the guy sitting at the absolute bottom of the rankings. And speaking of Raheem Morris, because this story keeps getting better, the man who was fired to make room for Stefanski's arrival graded out at a B+, not just above Stefanski, not just slightly better, a full letter grade and then some above the man who replaced him. Mike McDaniel, who got fired too, B. Sean Payton, who's had his own chaos, B. The Atlanta Falcons literally fired a B+ coach to hire a C- coach. But this goes deeper than just a bad grade on a piece of paper. This is about what was clearly happening inside that Cleveland building board all season long. And now it all makes sense. Look at the full Browns organizational breakdown from those same report cards. The locker room, an F, an outright F. Treatment of families, D-. Offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, who Stefanski brought with him to Atlanta, graded out at a D+. Special teams coordinator didn't even hit a D. Training room, a C. These aren't the grades of a slightly underperforming team. These are the grades of an organization that had fundamentally broken down from the inside. And the common thread tying it all together, sitting right at the center of that dysfunction, is the head coach.
I think Kevin Stefanski is bad at a portion of his job, and that portion is communication. I've said it for months. I've said it for a while.
Here's what's been said by months by people who were paying attention. The critique was never simply that Stefanski couldn't draw up plays or that he didn't understand football. That's a lazy take, and it misses the real issue entirely. The real problem, the thing that explains why players graded him this way, why the locker room got an F, why relationships fractured, is communication. A head coach isn't just the coordinator. A head coach isn't just the offensive genius in the room who draws up pretty plays on a whiteboard at 2 a.m. A head coach is a CEO. He is the face, the voice, the emotional center of an entire organization. He has to manage egos, manage relationships, manage the media, manage pressure, manage personalities, and do all of it simultaneously at the highest level of professional football on the planet. When your communication is broken, everything downstream breaks with it. The locker room cracks, players stop trusting you, staff starts pointing fingers, and before long, you're getting an F in the locker room category and a C- overall because the people who have to execute your vision every single week have lost faith in your ability to lead them. That's not a scheme problem, that's a leadership problem. And now the Falcons own it. Here's the thing about Atlanta. This is a roster with legitimate weapons. Bijan Robinson is one of the most electric running backs in football. The offensive talent in that building is real. This wasn't supposed to be a rebuilding project. This was supposed to be a launch pad. Get the right coach, surround him with weapons, and let the offense do what offenses are supposed to do. But you just handed the keys of that entire operation to a man whose own players in Cleveland, under his direct supervision, voted him the worst coach in the league. And then, as if that weren't enough, you brought his offensive coordinator with him. The same offensive coordinator who graded at a D+. The same system that couldn't function in Cleveland is now being imported wholesale into Atlanta.
Suck. Atlanta received 5 A's, including one of the owner, Arthur Blank, along with 2 A grades, 1 B, and 6 B+. That's what y'all had before y'all brought Kevin Stefanski.
And already there are questions swirling about roster decisions, about quarterback situations, about the direction of this team heading into next season. The pressure on Stefanski in Atlanta isn't just high, it's suffocating. Because he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt that a first-time head coach would normally receive. He carries his record with him. 8 wins over the last 2 years, an organizational report card that reads like a disaster audit. And now the lowest coaching grade in the entire NFL, as voted on by the players themselves. The Falcons front office made a bet. They looked at Stefanski's resume, those 2 Coach of the Year awards, the offensive pedigree, the connections, and they convinced themselves that the Cleveland nightmare was a circumstance problem, not a coach problem. They told themselves that a fresh start in a warmer market with better talent would unlock a different version of Kevin Stefanski. Maybe they're right. Maybe a change of scenery does something. Maybe Stefanski finds his footing. Maybe the communication improves. Maybe the offense catches fire and the Falcons surprise everybody. But the NFLPA report cards don't grade potential. They grade reality. And the reality, as documented by the very players who lived through it, is that Kevin Stefanski just completed the worst graded coaching season in the NFL. Not the second worst, not tied for last, the worst, alone at the bottom. The Falcons wanted an upgraded head coach. They wanted a proven commodity. They wanted to make a statement in a stacked NFC. Instead, they got C-. And Atlanta, the whole city, is about to find out exactly what that means.